Chapter 53, The Game That Makes You Scream 3. The game started rather plainly. This is my third year working for the company. Every day is a struggle, and I hardly get any sleep. I am so tired that I think I'm starting to hear things whenever I leave my office. The only thing keeping me sane is my playbox. Only when I play it do I feel safe. It started with a long and boring message that filled the entire screen. Carl's eyes narrowed as he read the message. Not even a voice audio, seriously. While he already had low expectations for the game, this was even worse than he had originally imagined. And take a look at the graphics. It hardly renders anything. This is the type of stuff you'd expect to have been developed 20 years ago. His comments were met with similar criticism from the chat. Low budget. Could still be scary, right? This looks boring. Switch to the next game. I'll switch stream if you continue to play. I could probably do better, lol. Reading the comment, Carl almost felt tempted to quit on the spot. However, thinking about how he could still make a quick buck from the hype the clip had, he clenched his teeth and decided to press on. Another long line of text appeared. It gave a rough outline of the situation. Tired worker, one who committed suicide, music box helping him feel safe. Just a bunch of nonsense that was put in order to add some psychological effect on the player. Fuck, I can't even skip this part. The fact that he couldn't skip all the boring intro made him want to tear his hair apart. A good horror game didn't need a cheap introduction like this. This was a typical case of show and not tell. Hopefully this shit won't last long. He could see his viewers getting fed up. Thankfully, it really didn't last long as he soon found himself in front of a door as he pressed his mouse, and the scene changed to a long corridor. A simple key tutorial appeared on the right of the screen. So I just walk. The commands looked rather simple, and Carl proceeded to move forward with the character. So far the game feels somewhat laggy. My best guess is that the developer used Unengine to develop the game, but rushed the game. The lack of rendering also seems to be because of that. The sound also doesn't seem to be well placed. The steps are a little uneven, and the breathing is too consistent. Who even breathes like that? Carl started commenting while playing the game. The game cost about $5, but I've seen cheaper games better done than Thigh. Flick. The screen suddenly turned black, and the darkness swallowed Carl from all directions, except the side monitor that displayed the chat. What? Carl looked at the screen in confusion, then quickly realized what was happening. I see what's going on here. He calmly pressed the W key as the echo of the character's steps made its way into his ears. Similar to gentle whispers, it appears that this game plays on sound and the lack of visuals in order to create tension, while eventually giving rise to the jump scare in the end. This was the standard structure of horror games, and as an experienced player, Carl saw right through the game's intentions. But flick. The light soon turned back on and he cocked his head. Oh, was I wrong? He turned the corridor to see a familiar corridor in the distance. He had a look of understanding then. An endless labyrinth-type game. Okay, I think I've played this one before. He was trying his very best to make the stream entertaining, but looking at the chat and the lack of engagement, he felt his heart twitch. I should get this game over with. He pressed Shift and made the character move faster. By now, he didn't even care that he was wasting the character's stamina. He just wanted to die and move on to the next game. However, just as he was about halfway through the corridor, the character stopped and took out his MP3. Hey! Before Carl could figure out what was happening, a certain tune began to play from the speakers of his computer. It was a gentle tune that seemed soothing to the ears, prompting his mind to gradually relax. Wow, this is not bad. Yeah, I like it. Elmao, did the developer spend all of his money on the music? Carl found himself nodding at the comments. The music was somewhat pleasant to the ears, unknowingly starting to make his body relax. And this was the moment the game changed. Flick. The darkness swallowed the room once more, and Carl felt his body tense. Hey! The sudden rise in tension threw him off completely. He took several deep breaths, trying to calm himself down before continuing forward. At the same time, he glanced at the chat, only to find that it was currently quiet. What happened? Carl didn't have enough time to figure out what was going on before the lights suddenly flickered back on. Flick! Turning the corner and into a different corridor, he noticed a change. His expression grew grim when he saw the flowers on the door and the message that read, "In memory of Ramal Neal." He felt his heart pound at the sight of the message, and just as he quietly swallowed his saliva, the lights turned off. Flick! Tsuak! Carl flinched, his hand reaching for his shirt as he looked around. It was only after a second that he realized that the light had turned off, and he looked at the camera, embarrassed. He was just about to joke with the chat when... Step! He suddenly heard the sound of a step coming from behind. Because he was wearing headphones, the sound felt more pronounced, as though it was really coming from behind him, and his entire body shuddered, his palms sweaty. Oh shit, oh shit. Gone was his previous confident demeanor. Pressing W, he urged the character forward, the steps echoing loudly from behind. Faster, move faster. He pressed shift, but soon stopped when he realized he was draining the character's stamina. Oh fuck. His face turned pale when he saw that the stamina wasn't regenerating fast. With a twitch of his fingers, he looked at the chat in order to distract himself, but... Empty. No one made a single comment. What happened? Did they leave? That quickly proved not to be the case, as he saw the number of viewers almost double. Unfortunately, he couldn't pay much attention to them as he continued to hear the sounds of the steps coming from behind him. Shit. He hurried forward. Carl soon began to find himself in a terrifying cycle of fear. Every time the light turned on, he would breathe before suddenly holding his breath whenever the darkness and the steps came. Before he knew it, his entire body was drenched in sweat. Shit, run faster, Halak. By now, the steps behind him were running at him incredibly fast. Carl felt his heart in his throat as he tried his best to run, but it was of no use. The character couldn't keep up. His entire body tensed, his head moving away from the monitor as he hastily tapped on the keys of his keyboard. No fucking run. He was practically screaming at this point, his hands shaking as he pressed shift, but soon enough. You have run out of stamina. A notification popped up and the character stopped. No, why are you stopping? Ah, shit. A crunching sound echoed shortly after as the head snapped back, displaying a terrifying empty face. Carl's entire body trembled as he fell back, his mouth and keyboard falling away. Kairarala. The scream pierced through the room. It was loud, and the raw fear contained within it woke up several of the nearby neighbors. What's going on? Did something happen? That was a scream, right? Let me call the police, this might be serious. Such a scene repeated throughout the entire night as several screams filled the neighborhoods. On that day, the police received more calls than it was used to. And on that day, a regular day in the office started to trend. For once, I woke up on time. I looked at my watch and saw that it was 8 a.m. Rubbing my eyes and stretching my body, I got out of bed before taking a quick shower and getting ready to work. Right, I did say I would check once I woke up. As I was brushing my teeth, I turned my attention towards my phone. I suddenly grew curious about the game. How was it doing? Opening the phone, I stared at it nervously, my thumb hovering over the dock app. My heartbeat was a little too fast as I tapped the icon, watching as the app loaded slowly. The moment it opened, my eyes were drawn to the account status, suspended. My heart sank just a little, but it wasn't like I hadn't been expecting this. I just hoped they'd have resolved the situation by now. It's not strange, though they usually take a day or two with this stuff. I was still confident I'd get my account reinstated soon enough. What was most important was to see how the actual game was doing. Did the marketing stunt work or not? I swallowed my saliva while nervously typing the name of the game in the search bar. My mind couldn't help but wander to the worst possible scenarios. I started to think about Kyle's reaction and the things I'd have to do in case I failed the mission. The few seconds it took for me to type the name of the game felt like forever, and once I searched the name of the game and pressed on it, a series of results appeared. Soon my eyes fell on my game, and my expression slowly grew slack shortly after. Tuck. The toothbrush fell from my mouth, my mind blank. It took a moment for me to snap out of it, and when I did, I felt the toothpaste slip away from my mouth. That. Quickly whipping the toothpaste away, I blinked to make sure I wasn't seeing things. I even double-checked to see if it was the correct game that I pressed on. But even as I blinked, no change occurred. It was the right game, and it was all real. IH. Recent reviews, neutral, 731 reviews. My hand shook as I stared at the number of reviews that were on the game's page. While the neutral on the review page meant that the game had mixed opinions, what mattered was the number of reviews. 731. That was a ridiculous number of reviews. This was especially so when taking into account that only a small player base would go out of their way to send a review. This meant that the game had sold quite a lot of copies. Ho! I could hardly contain my excitement as my chest trembled with each breath, and I started to search for my game on the web. I wanted to see the reason for its sudden explosion in popularity. Is it because of the stream? If so, I should do it more often. However, the moment the first search loaded, my excitement almost faded. In its stead, I found my face slowly starting to stiffen. Well, I wouldn't be sent to jail for this, right? I didn't even know how to react when staring at the first title that appeared. Screams rattle neighborhoods, flooding police lines with panicked calls. The culprit, a game called A Regular Day in the Office. I clicked on the website to see a long article about the events that transpired this past night, and how several neighborhoods were terrorized by such screams. Haha. I forced out a laugh before finally looking at the reviews on the game. The more I read them, the more I covered my face. Terrible, just terrible. I couldn't sleep at all because of this. The police were called and everyone was questioned. Terrible. Awful game, just awful. The page was flooded with negative reviews. Most of them seemed to come from the victims who had suffered the previous night due to the screams. However, there were also quite a few nice reviews right beneath. I am not an avid fan of horror games, but I decided to try this because of the stream. The quality of the game is nothing to be proud of. The rendering sucks, and I could tell the developer cut corners in several areas. But, despite all of these flaws, the game managed to make me scream, loud enough to make my neighbors concerned, and for that I can only give it a high score. I recommend. One review in particular stood out to me, not only because of the number of likes it received, but also because of how genuine it felt. I read it a couple of times before liking it. Shortly after, I just found myself standing by the mirror, my expression oddly calm. To say the negative reviews didn't affect me would be a lie. They did to some extent. The game, while a bit rushed, was still something that I had developed after a lot of struggle and suffering. To see people trash my work didn't feel good. But even though the bad reviews bothered me, it didn't surpass the other feeling that I felt as I leaned closer to the sink, staring at my reflection within the mirror. Though not as bad as before, my eyes were still baggy while my disheveled hair covered my face. Gripping the edges of the sink, my arms shook like they could barely hold me up. I hated horror. I hated it so much it made me sick. Made me want to puke my guts out. And yet, I lowered my head, staring at my trembling hands, feeling something ugly coil tighter inside me. My lips pressed into a hard, bitter line. I am more twisted than I thought. Because no matter how much I hated it, I realized just how much I loved to traumatize people with my very own creations. Mori. I wanted to do more. On the outskirts of the Velora Art Museum, several footsteps crunched through the overgrown greenery. Following the incident that had occurred the previous day, and after careful investigation by the police, it was found that the situation was a lot more serious than previously anticipated, necessitating to involvement of the BAU directly, and forcing a specialized team to come and investigate the situation. This matter became especially concerning when the agents dispatched on the mission heard a certain beeping noise coming from the energy detection meter. Beep, beep. One of the agents, a tall man with a sharp jawline, frowned as he stared at the blinking light on his device. I'm getting a reading, he said, his voice tense as he brushed the shoulders of his suit. It's coming from inside the building. Same here. Another agent responded, his expression tight. I'm getting a strong signal. The third agent, a woman with dark, intense eyes, glanced up from her screen and met the other's gaze. Something's wrong. This is no ordinary energy reading. The fourth agent, a younger man, swallowed, his fingers tightening around the device. We need to be careful. This isn't just a routine situation. There's something else going on here. A reading suggested an abnormal presence of excess energy. This was not good news. Let's go. The agents walked into the building with caution, their steps careful as they followed the beeps of the meters in their hands. Coming to a stop in front of a trapdoor, they looked at each other before walking in and slowly walking past a long and narrow tunnel, the sound of their steps echoing loudly in their ears, alongside the beeps of their devices. The tunnel opened up into a small, dimly lit room. A single, empty coffin lay in the center, its polished wood gleaming faintly in the weak light. The beeping now rang in their ears, growing more frantic with each passing second. Beep, beep, beep. The expressions of the four agents changed as they settled their gazes on the empty coffin that sat in the middle of the room. It's coming from right here. The agents grew tense as they stared at the coffin, and as one approached it, he took a deep breath before slowly opening it. Kriak! A creaking sound echoed as the agent slowly opened the lid of the casket. As the lid slowly rose, the agent's eyes widened in shock. There, swirling inside the coffin, was a vortex of black, a void so dark it seemed to suck in the light around it. The air in the room grew heavier, colder, and everyone's faces changed drastically. Shit! The woman hissed, her hand reaching out for her phone. A gate has opened. Quickly report the situation to the Bureau. News of a gate opening quickly reached the ears of all the major guilds within the island. There were a total of 72 guilds within the island, of which only 2 were of the king grade. Guilds were ranked according to the chessboard hierarchy, with pawn grade guilds at the bottom and king grade guilds at the top. The Severed Star Guild was a newly promoted queen grade guild, just shy of the king grade. They still lacked the necessary achievements and members to reach the king grade, but that wasn't an issue. Even though they had yet to reach the king grade, they were considered to be the guild with the highest chance of advancing to such a grade. After all, each one of their departments had several geniuses that could make any other guild salivate with envy. At this very moment, a meeting was taking place on the guild's 50th floor. The top floor and the guild master's floor. The gate has been identified as a C-ranked anomalous type gate. There are already several guilds that are trying to get their hands on the gate, in particular, Crownfall and Ivory Dominion. That's a little worrying. A middle-aged man replied, his voice low and steady. He wore a dark suit that strained against his broad frame while his black hair and beard were neatly trimmed. Wearing a flat expression, the guild master leaned back in his chair as light poured through the massive windows behind him. If those 2 are trying to take the gates, then things will be rather complicated for us. I'm sure they will try their best to make sure we don't get a spot. The rise of another king-grade guild wasn't good for them, and so it wasn't strange for them to try their best to make things harder for themselves. We can't afford to lose this gate, especially not when we have found so many talented recruits. The reason why gates were important was because of the fragments that they managed to collect from them. Not only were the fragments extremely valuable, providing extremely clean energy to sustain the island and several other important operations, they were also crucial in the development of an awakened. There existed several types of fragments, and each decree required a specific sequence or number of specific types of fragments in order to advance to the next order and unlock the next node. The higher the order, the more absurd the requirement. It was for this reason that they couldn't give up on the gate. Guild Master, if I may say something. Interrupting the Guild Master's thoughts, his assistant stepped forward, a folder clutched tightly to her chest as she adjusted her sharp, angular glasses. There's actually something interesting that I've managed to find while investigating the recent gate. Oh, do tell. Interest flashed across the Guild Master's eyes. What could Adeline have possibly found? Take a look over here. Adeline placed a file on the desk, revealing a photo of a man who stood out immediately, mostly because of the sunglasses he wore. She pointed at the image. He, along with another streamer known as Jamie TV, was responsible for uncovering the anomaly within the museum. And this guy right here. She pointed at the man with sunglasses. He's actually within our guild as an observer for one of the stars of the containment department. If we play our cards right, we might be able to claim a spot in the raid.
MHM.
The guild master crossed his arms, his gaze focused on the man with the sunglasses. So he was within the guild. Well, that changed the situation. One of the rules set by the Bureau was that whoever discovered a gate had the right to claim a spot for it. If the young man with the sunglasses was truly within their guild, then all they needed to do was convince him to join, and the spot would be theirs. The guild master made his decision then. Get in contact with him, offer him a job here. Understood. How much should I offer him? The guild master pondered for a moment before looking back at his assistant. Which department was it again? Containment.
Yes.
All right, let me make a call. The guild master reached for the phone next to him and dialed a number. A rough voice echoed from the speakers a few seconds later. Guild master, why are you calling? I'm kind of a little busy right now. Adeline bitterly smiled when hearing the voice coming from the speaker. Only he would speak to the guild master in that manner. It's kind of a life and death situation, you know. It's Uruk. What's going on? Are you in the middle of a gate? If so. No, I'm just constipated.
Later.
The room fell silent before the guild master suddenly burst out laughing. His laugh echoed within the quiet space as Adeline covered her face and shook her head.
Seriously?
Uruk Guildmaster, his is no laughing matter. I'm actually dying over here. Can you make it quick? Yes, I will. With a shake of his head, the guild master went straight to the point. I need you to tell me about the observer that one of your recruits brought in. What do you think about him? As if forgetting all about his situation, the line fell quiet. It remained quiet for a few seconds before his voice echoed again. Are you talking about the boy called Seth?
Seth.
The guild master turned to look at Adeline, who slowly nodded her head. Yes, him. What do you think about him?
Hi.
A tired sound escaped the section chief as the line fell quiet again. Seeing Sebastian act like this, the guild master grew even more curious. While Sebastian tended to act chaotically and erratically, he was an extremely competent man. There was a reason why he was the section chief of the containment department. And his next words made the guild master extremely surprised. I really want him. He could feel the desire in the section chief's voice as he spoke. Guild master, have you not watched the stream? The stream? The guild master looked to his assistant, who readily displayed to him a certain video. He watched tentatively as the section chief spoke over the phone. The first time I was impressed was during the newbie trials. He was just there to look but decided to have a go. He ended up setting the record for the fastest run in the game. I gave up thinking that I might be jumping the gun, but then I saw his stream. That guy, he might just be a monster. The guild master's eyes narrowed as he skipped past several scenes and witnessed the subject with heavy scrutiny. He analyzed everything, from the speed of his thoughts, his handling of the situation, and his general calmness. He was slowly starting to see what the section chief was talking about. But then, I ended up offering him a position, but he refused me.
HM.
The guild master turned his attention to the phone again. He refused.
Yes.
What did you offer him? Very good terms, top even for the top recruits in their first year. But he still rejected. Yes, he said that he wanted to continue developing games. Games? The guild master paused, his eyes blinking rapidly before he suddenly burst out laughing again. His laugh this time was even louder than the previous, the amusement clear on his face. Eventually, calming himself down, he looked towards Adeline. Draft up a contract. Guild master, are you going to offer him a contract? I'm afraid he's still going to reject it. Add the title of trauma consultant. Give him a base salary of around 2,500 a month and tell him he can do whatever he wants. We just need him for the gate. Adeline took the orders seriously and jotted everything down. Then finished everything she bowed before leaving. On the phone, the section chief remained stunned. Eventually, however, he recovered and started speaking hurriedly. Wait, you're giving him a bogus position. What for? Wait, is it for the gate?
Correct.
The guild master nodded. If he works for us, then we will get a claim to the gate. The profit that we'll make from the gate will far outstrip the salary that we are offering him.
Oh,
The section chief started to understand, however he soon chuckled. But that's not the only reason, right? I bet you have other motives behind your actions. The guild master merely smiled without answering. The section chief pressed on. You're smiling, aren't you? Fuck, just thinking about it is giving me goosebumps. Shit. Aren't you constipated?
huh,
The line paused before the section chief sighed. I was lying.
oh,
The guild master didn't sound surprised. And what exactly were you doing? I was playing football. Recently, I feel like my leg hasn't exactly been as strong as it once was. The last time I tried to kick. Do. The guild master ended the call there, allowing for the silence to return to the office. Then, slowly turning his attention towards the sunglasses-wearing figure in the file before him, he drummed his fingers on the table. For the section chief to say something like that, I'm starting to become interested myself. I sat in silence, staring blankly at my laptop. How many sales exactly do I have? The quest never specifically said that I needed to make money. The criteria were for me to hit 10,000 sales. Staring at the number of reviews, I felt that I had hit that number or was close to hitting it. If that's the case, then maybe it shouldn't matter if I'm currently suspended. I checked the app on my laptop, but had yet to see the quest completion notification. That most likely meant that I had yet to hit 10,000 sales. But if that's the case, I don't see why they'd think I was botting. While 10,000 was a high number to me, it was still considered a small number within the industry. It wasn't a number large enough to make Doc suspicious about me botting. In that case, could the reason be something else? Like, someone reported my account. I groaned when I thought about it. It made sense when taking into account the fact that there were a lot of trolls online. If they really did do something like that, then I needed to do something quick. And so, after a lot of thought, I came up with one conclusion. I'll open an official account on Robes and send a message there. Hopefully, people see it and do something. Robes was the social media platform that people used here. It was also where Zoe posted, and where her account was. I scrolled through her posts to see how she managed her account. But all I saw were photos of her in weird poses and different clothing. I read the caption of one of them. About to enter a gate, wish me luck Tilda. The photo above was a selfie of her with a gate in the distance. Not far, I could even see Kyle, his eyes half closed mid-yawn. That's funny. I chuckled at the sight as I tried to pinch the photo to get a better look. But just as I did, oh crap, I accidentally scrolled down and liked the next photo. Just her in a dress standing by a cafe, sunglasses lowered, with a caption that read, "Am I pretty?" I sat in silence for a short moment before sighing. Well, whatever, she has a lot of followers, so she won't notice it. I then shifted my attention back towards my own page. It was very plain, with my name on the page, Seth Thorne. It's definitely plain. There were also no posts. I wasn't the type to use social media, so this was nothing to be surprised about. Another thing about the account was that it didn't really stand out. There were quite a few other accounts with the same name and surname. As a result, I changed the name to make it more obvious. Horror game developer Seth Thorne. Posts 0 followers, 0 following, 0. Yes, this looks much better. I nodded in satisfaction when I saw the name. This will definitely make it obvious that I'm a game developer. I didn't waste any more time after that. I quickly got to work and wrote a message detailing my situation and how my account had been suspended before posting it. There. I didn't stop there. In order to truly get the news to spread, I sorted through my contacts and sent a message to Jamie. I've just created an account on Robes. Would you mind sharing this with your followers? I have an important message there. I didn't wait long to receive a message from him. I got you. Nice. With that sorted, I felt a lot more relaxed. While I didn't know if this would help or not, I knew that creating an account was important. This was so that when my next game came out, news would spread fast. I closed the page and went online to check for any updates about my game, but just as the browser loaded, there was a knock at the door.
To talk. Huh.
I looked at the door in confusion. Who could it be? It couldn't be Kyle since he told me he was busy. Then, "May I come in?" An unfamiliar female voice echoed from the other side of the door. I was stunned, but I still replied.
Oh, yes.
Okay. The door opened, and moments later, a woman stepped inside. She dressed in a sharp suit, her hair pulled back into a tight bun, and angular glasses framing her sharp eyes. "It's nice to meet you." She was the first one to greet me as I stood up and extended my hand in her direction. For some reason, I felt nervous while looking at her. "Yes. I'll get straight to the point then." The woman dropped a file on my desk. "We would like to offer you a position within the guild."
Hey.
A sudden job offer. Why? Could it be because of the section chief? If so, I'm sorry, but we took your rejection into account. That's why we're not offering you an official position. You're not. I was surprised to hear this, but I was also confused. If they weren't going to offer me an official position, what exactly were they planning on offering me? Have a look. The lady pointed at the file on the desk, and that was when I finally took a good look at it, opening it and reading the contents. It took me about 10 minutes to read the entire file, and once I was done, I found myself unable to say a single word. What could I even say? What do you think? If there's anything that you're dissatisfied with, we can make adjustments. It's good. The terms were really good. A base salary of $500 for a job as a trauma consultant, but despite the job title, I didn't really have to do anything. It was just a random name thrown in for the job. So, essentially, I get paid for doing nothing. This made no sense. Was this Kyle's doing? As if sensing my suspicion, the lady adjusted her glasses. Kyle is one of our star performers within the guild. We do not wish for him to be poached by other guilds. This is one of the reasons why we're offering you these terms.
Oh.
So it was because of Kyle. This made a lot more sense. But still, surely this wasn't all right. There's another reason. There it is. A gate recently opened in the museum that you previously streamed in. Because of your direct involvement with the situation, you can be considered to have contributed to the finding of the gate. We need you to be our employee to ensure us a spot. So that's the case. I felt a lot more relaxed, knowing the real reason behind the sudden job offer. If it had just been because of Kyle, I would have still felt a little suspicious. But this, it made a lot of sense. Does that satisfy your curiosity? Yes, it does. I looked at the file in front of me and nodded. I was just about to sign it when I stopped. Looking at the lady, a thought crossed my mind and I hesitated, but as if sensing my hesitation, the lady spoke. Is there anything? Actually, yes. Please let me know. I scratched the side of my face, a little embarrassed. Is it possible to give me a down payment of $10,000? You can deduct it from my salary. I just need the money fast. With the threat of the conductor looming, as well as the cult, I needed as much money as possible. For that reason, I felt the need to ask for 10,000 directly. This would convert to 1,000 SP, which would help me gain access to more items. 10,000. Thankfully, it didn't seem to be a difficult request. That can be done. Is there anything else? HMN. I stopped mid-sentence, laughing awkwardly as I looked at her. Actually, there is something else. Yes. I hesitated before looking at my phone, and then at her. Surely they can, right? Is it possible for you guys to reinstate a game? Your account has been reinstated. I stared blankly at the notification that appeared on my computer. And that was fast. Not even a few hours after I had made my request to the guild, and my account got reinstated. I didn't even know how to feel. To think that a guild's influence was this big. Wait, does that mean that the post I made on robes is useless? It wasn't a big issue. Either way, the account was going to be useful for me later down the line. I just logged in and deleted the post that I had previously made. Jamie had yet to make the announcement, so the follower count was still stuck at 0. But that was irrelevant. Ding! You have been transferred 10,000. I couldn't contain my smile when I saw the new notification that appeared on my phone. I didn't even hesitate to convert all of it into SB, netting myself 1,000 SB. It's a bit of a pity, but this is necessary. I now only had enough money for food and basic necessities. Rent was free, and so was the office space. My general expenses were low to begin with. With that being said, I opened the doc application and checked the statistics. I was really curious to see how much money I had made and the number of sales. It's here, right? I fumbled around the page for a few moments before finally locating the section, and just as I clicked on the statistics, the smile on my face slowly faded.
Hey.
I had to blink several times to make sure I wasn't seeing things. However, blinking again and seeing no change in the data in front of me, I slumped back onto my chair. My mind could hardly process the number in front of me. I had originally thought the number of sales had almost reached 10,000, but I was wrong. I was very wrong. I drew a deep breath, trying my best to calm my trembling hands as I stared at the number on the screen in front of me. Sales, 17,319. This is insane. The number was far greater than I had originally anticipated. In fact, it had far surpassed it. I then looked at the income generated section and drew another cold breath. Income, 60,617. This was the first time I had ever earned this much money before, and the previous excitement that I felt from receiving 10,000 felt like almost nothing. To make things even better, the sales were still going up. This was far from the final income I was going to make from the game. The thought drove me mad. But there was only one issue with the situation. I can't withdraw the money until the end of the month. Doc paid every end of the month, and it was currently January 17. There were still 14 days left until the end of the month. I guess it was still a good idea for me to request the money immediately. Taking a deep breath, I started to look through the statistics of the game. I was curious to see what else I could find, but right as I got into it, a notification appeared on my computer. Market your game.
Oh.
Quest completed.
Oh.
So now you decide to show up. I shook my head. Very clearly, I had fulfilled the criteria of the system several hours ago, and yet it was only now that I received the notification. This also happened back when I completed the museum quest. Was there a specific criterion for the completion mark notification to appear, or was the system just trying its best to mess around with me? I really wasn't sure, but the sudden flood of notifications made all those thoughts pass away. Calculating rewards. The calculation didn't take very long. It didn't take long before 3,000 SB was added to my account. Taking into account the extra 1,000 SB that I had just recently added to my account, I had a total of 10,450 SB. Holy shit. I looked at the system shop. With this amount of money, I can literally buy anything. The most expensive item was the butcher's knife. It was also the most intriguing item as it was a growth type, but I didn't choose to buy it immediately. There were quite a few interesting items, as well as unusual ones like the quick-stitch outfit, which allowed one to instantly transform into any outfit the wearer imagined. I didn't know how that would come in handy. There was also the liar's lip balm, which could make any lie undetectable. I had a lot of options. Quite a few indeed. But in the end, my eyes always fell on the knife. It was the most intriguing item in the shop. At the same time, it was also an item I wasn't sure whether to buy or not. If my guess is right, since it's a growth-type weapon, it'll start off rather weak. That wouldn't be ideal, considering that I only have a day and a half left before the conductor comes. I should hold off on buying it for now. It was a bit of a pity, but I knew that by the end of the month, with the amount of money I'd rake in, I'd be able to buy the knife. I just needed to be careful with my points. Okay, then. Leaning back onto my chair, I scrolled through all the listed items. What should I buy? Seriously? Zoe mumbled while she sat in her cubicle, her leg resting on her desk as she fiddled with the phone in her hand. She had just received a message from Jamie. Originally, she had expected him to ask for the shoutout, but that never happened. Instead, he was messaging her about something else. Seth has just started a page of robes. He's asked me to promote it and authenticate it.
Oh, that's cool.
But what does it have to do with me? Zoe's expression turned strange. Don't tell me he wants me to promote the page. Zoe didn't know how to feel about that. In part, she felt responsible for the incident, but at the same time, it wasn't really her fault. He was the one who had chosen that place. Furthermore, she had gotten him in contact with Jamie to help him. But should I reject it if Jamie asks then? Don't worry, I'm not asking you to promote his account. That would be useless since it would be filled with a bunch of your fans that have nothing to do with what he does. They'll just be a nuisance to him.
Oh.
Contrary to her expectations, Jamie didn't ask her to promote his page. Then what exactly did he want? I want you to help him manage his page. I just looked at his page and... He didn't finish his sentence, but from the way he was texting, it was clear that it wasn't very good. Zoe sighed, but at the same time, she was curious. Surely it couldn't be too bad, right? All right, send me his page. Jamie didn't waste a single second and sent the robes page over. Zoe tapped the link and her app launched instantly. Moments later, a simple page appeared. Her eyes were drawn straight to the name at the top and the photo beneath it.
PFTT.
She burst out laughing shortly after.
What the hell's harder?
Despite her best efforts, Zoe couldn't hold back a laugh as she eyed his profile picture. A picture of Seth wearing a pair of sunglasses and looking far too pleased with himself. He looks nothing like a game developer, PFTT. Not only that, but looking at his bio, she couldn't help but laugh again. I am not liable for any damages caused by my games. All responsibility falls on you for screaming and waking up your neighbor.
What the hell, haha?
The more she looked at the profile, the funnier she found it. It was a strange feeling, almost unfamiliar. How long had it been since she'd laughed like this? Ever since the incident with her parents, she'd buried herself in work, her goal clear. She wanted to become stronger. Strong enough to prevent incidents like her own from happening again, as well as conquering Scariest Island. She didn't have much time to laugh. And yet, somehow, in just the past few days, she'd laughed more than she had in her entire time here. It felt weird. So damn weird. Zoe rubbed her eyes while looking at Seth's profile. She shook her head and snooped around the page. The account looked pretty new. He didn't seem to have done much with it. Fiddling around, she looked at his history, not expecting much, but...
Hey!
Her face froze. Horror game developer Seth Thorne has previously liked this post by Zoe Turline. She then looked down to see a very familiar photo. Her face froze.
What the fuck?
All right, all attention over here. A loud voice snapped Zoe out of her thoughts. She dropped her phone onto the desk and sat up straight, eyes fixed ahead as the section chief appeared, disheveled and groggy, absently scratching at the unkempt stubble on his face. He was holding onto several papers that he waved. I've just received a gate report. I'm sure most of you are aware of what gate I'm talking about. It's a C-ranked gate, so it's nothing too big. I'll need any 3rd to 4th orders to lead a team. The section chief then looked through the papers. He clicked his tongue while mumbling, Kyle, he's not here, so I can't drop this annoying thing off to him. If that's the case then. The section chief raised his head and eventually locked eyes with Zoe, who felt her heart sink. She could already see where this was going.
Zoe.
He smiled. It was a disgusting smile that Zoe had seen too many times by now. It was disgusting.
No.
You don't even know what I'm about to ask. I do actually. You already made it quite obvious. I don't have time to babysit the operation. I am trying to gather enough fragments to advance to the next order. What are you missing? I'm missing 10 fragments of light, an essence of light, and the heart of a 5th-order light attributed anomaly. In short, she was missing a lot of things, but this couldn't be helped. The more one advanced, the harder it was for them to go to the next order. Depending on the decree chosen, one would need to follow a specific list of items and fragments in order to stimulate the next node. And even if she did manage to acquire all of the necessary items, there was no guarantee she'd be able to succeed in unlocking her next node. She didn't really have time to invest in a C-ranked gate.
Oof.
Even the section chief looked a little sorry for her. The number of items wasn't low. Still, it wasn't as though he didn't have a way around this. I'll give you 10,000 points. Will you take the job then? Make it 12,000 and I accept.
So, that's fine.
The section chief clicked his tongue while Zoe smirked. This was what she had been aiming for the entire time. The guild had a specific merit system that came through points. With enough points, she'd be able to purchase the necessary items for her advancement. It just so happened that 12,000 was just enough for her to purchase one of the items that she needed for her advancement. It would still take her a while to advance, but she'd at least be one step closer. Make sure you don't fail the mission. You won't be the only one who will go inside. You must pay absolute attention to those fuckers from Ivory and Crownfall. You know what happened the last time we were with them.
I got it.
Zoe reached forward to grab the file from the section chief's hands. In it, she could see all the detailed reports from the scouts.
So, test XXXX12.
Subject D9341, armed with a combat knife. Result, after 4 minutes, SCP-XXXX1 instances overwhelmed D9341. Last transmission, they just keep coming, oh god, they're redacted.
Test XXXX19.
Subject MTF Operative Gamma 7, Mothman, equipped with heavy weaponry. Result, operatives held for 17 minutes before being overrun. Final message, we've killed hundreds, there's thousands now, it's not stopping.
So,
her brows furrowed the moment she read the first part of the report as she sat up in her chair. As expected, this didn't seem like an easy scenario. How troublesome. In the end, I didn't buy anything. I just spent most of my time looking through the items and memorizing their description. There were just too many good items, I couldn't make up my mind. But more importantly, trauma consultant. I looked at the shiny metal plaque that rested on my desk with mixed feelings. This was merely a customary plaque given to me by the guild in order to make my job look official, but I was worried if people actually took it seriously.
What then?
Don't tell me I'd have to actually give them counseling. Can I reject them? They won't get angry for rejecting their mental traumas, right? I had plenty of mental trauma myself. If anything, I was the one who needed counseling. Well, if it really does come down to it, I'll just tell them the truth. Either way, they should be aware of it. I'm not qualified to be some sort of consultant. Then again, this could also be a good opportunity for me to gain some connections.
Whatever.
I brushed those thoughts aside and shifted my attention back towards the painting in front of me. I stood up from my seat and took a good look at it. The young girl was now in the position she had been when I had first received the painting, and there didn't seem to be anything strange with it anymore. I sighed in relief then. Since I no longer have to look at it at night, it should be a regular painting now. I thought about keeping the painting hung on the wall, but then I recalled something extremely important. This painting. It was actually stolen.
Shit.
I silently groaned when I realized this, although I was confident that not many would recognize the painting. Now that there was a gate that had happened in the area where the museum was, I was sure that a few of the people had done some research on the place. Those guys would definitely recognize it in an instant. But there was something else more important than that. I thought back to the scenario and how the museum had been abandoned because the painting had been stolen. If those weird cult people already had the girl's body, why would they care to stop funding the museum once the painting got lost? Surely they could have just made another one, right? A coincidence? Or is there more to it than I know? The thought left me unsettled as I stared at the painting intently. For now, it would be best if I take it down. As I reached out to grab the edges of the painting and take it down, my fingers brushing against the old frame that supported the painting, something else caught my eye, just in time to make me pause. Slowly, I looked back at the painting, my chest growing heavier. And then, I saw it. The face of the little girl, her face pale and eyes wide, staring at me point blank. My mind blanked at the sight. I couldn't even scream before her small hands shot out, unnaturally fast, seizing my head and yanking me forward. Into the painting. Everything turned dark from that moment. By the time I woke up again, a large notification appeared in front of me. You have entered a scenario.
Ah, shit.
Scenario will be starting soon. You have 30 minutes, please get ready. Staring at the floating notification in front of me, I felt at a complete loss. Scenario, why am I suddenly in a scenario? What's going on? The last thing I recalled was standing before the painting. That was when my mind blanked. No, wait. I suddenly recalled the face of the little girl and the hands that reached out for me. Hastily, I sat up and looked around me.
Could she be? Huh?
A dull sound escaped my lips. Not far from where I sat, a mansion rose tall and pale against the soft blue sky, its white walls gleaming under the midday sun. All around me, lush greenery swayed gently, the rough blades of grass grazing my hands and legs as I rested in its midst.
This place.
It looked extremely familiar.
This is the place within the painting, isn't it?
I recognized the small pathway that was within the painting. I could even recognize the spot where the little girl had posed.
Then,
I'm in the world of the painting.
This.
I gradually stood up and dusted my clothes, trying my best to gather my bearings. The situation made no sense to me at all, but I had to remain calm. A scenario. I am now inside a scenario. In other words, a gate. The thought made me groan. If this were truly a gate, then I was in serious trouble, especially since I didn't know the level of the gate. I was currently in the first order. This meant that I could only realistically handle F to E ranked gates. Clearing higher gates was not impossible, but I needed specific items and ample preparations in order to do so. But I had neither. I wasn't prepared, nor did I have items that were specific to clearing the scenario. In other words, I was fucked.
Shit, what do I do?
I looked around me to see if there was some sort of exit, but no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't see anything. The only thing I could see was the mansion in the distance, but that was the last place I wanted to go. Then, what was I supposed to do? No, now's not the time to panic. I had to take several breaths in order to calm my mind down. There was no use panicking at this point. Whatever happened had happened. The only thing I could do now was look forward and find a way out of this situation. I thought back to the second message I received, and a thought occurred to me. It says that I have 30 minutes to prepare. That might just be the thing that I need in order to clear this ridiculous scenario. Regarding the description of the scenario, I was sure I was going to receive it just before the scenario started. In that case, the best course of action for me to take was to scout the mansion. But there was only one problem. I really don't want to do that. Just the sight of the distant mansion made my stomach sick, and yet I knew that going into the mansion was the only way for me to survive. As such, pushing my cowardly thoughts away, I headed towards the mansion. I hope I'm right about this. The mansion was only a few minutes' walk from where I spawned, if it could even be called that. In order to save time, I jogged all the way there before arriving in front of its large wooden door. Standing by the door, I felt small. From the finely polished white stone that made up the structure to the well-kept garden that stood outside the door. Everything about the place felt rich. And yet, the more I looked at it, the more dread I felt. I really don't have a good feeling about this. I said this while pushing the doors open, a gentle creak reaching my ears as a large hall appeared in my vision, flanked on either side by sweeping staircases that curved upward toward the second floor. A tall chandelier stood above, and several doors appeared on each side of the first floor, each open, revealing an empty darkness within. One that seemed to suck the very light away.
H-ho.
My chest trembled as I took a deep breath. The place looked rather eerie as I stepped in, a sudden chill invading my body. I swallowed silently while taking in my surroundings. The scenario hasn't started yet. In that case, there shouldn't be any monsters or problems. At least I hoped that was the case. However, I still remained cautious as I scanned my surroundings, the mansion looking completely deserted.
Step.
The echo of my step echoed as I stepped forward, the silence around me loud. This should be the main hall. I looked around and memorized every detail of the hall, before moving towards one of the doors that was shrouded in darkness. Despite my nervousness, I moved past the door and entered an entirely different room. The moment the light touched my eyes, I realized I was standing in an enormous room, far larger than the entrance hall. Along one side, desks were neatly arranged, each draped with pristine white cloths and topped with gleaming metal buffet platters. The ceilings above were extremely high, with the brown polished floor gleaming under the lights of the chandeliers above. Windows lined the walls, veiled in sheer curtains that just barely gave a glimpse of the world outside the large windows. At the far end, a grand piano rested beneath the chandeliers, its polished black surface catching the light and gleaming like still water under the sun.
This place.
I held my breath for a moment, then stepped forward, the sound of my step echoing louder than before. I paused before the tables, where my eyes caught the edge of a certain flyer. I slowly picked it up. You are cordially invited to the Midnight Masquerade, a night of mystery, music, and moonlight. Date, Saturday, October 19th. Time, doors open at 8:00 p.m., unmasking at midnight. Venue, the Grand Ballroom, Ravenshade Manor. Dress code, formal attire and mask required. Beneath the chandeliers and shadows. Let secrets dance and silence speak. Join us for an evening of enchantment where every face hides a story. No entry without a mask. A masked ball. I read through each line again to pick up any details before placing the flyer down and looking around. Could this be the scenario? Judging by the situation around me, it just might be the case. I looked at the flyer once again and then at the surroundings. The more I looked, the more confident I was about my conclusion. However, it was still far too early to tell. There were still other rooms that I had to explore. This could just be a small part of the entire scenario. The most appropriate course of action was to continue and explore the place while memorizing the layout of the mansion and looking for any more clues and tips that could help me figure out more about the scenario. I sighed and checked the time. There were still only about 20 minutes left before the scenario started. To ensure that I managed to memorize everything, I stopped wasting time and moved on to the other rooms of the mansion. This room doesn't look anything special. The room next to the ballroom was simply a dining room. I looked around the room before settling my gaze on a specific painting. It depicted a family of 4, a man, a woman, and 2 young boys. They were all standing outside the mansion, smiling, just like any regular family. I studied the painting carefully. Aside from their clothes, which looked rather posh, there was nothing unusual about the painting. But still, it made me question something. Is there no little girl? Last I recalled, the little girl was part of this family. Was this painting taken before her death or after? I licked my lips, imprinting the image inside my mind before going to the next room. I continued like this until I reached the second floor. The second floor appeared to be the residential area where the rooms were located. Besides the large dining room in the middle connected to the kitchen in total, there were a total of 7 bedrooms, with multiple bathrooms located throughout. It was a very fancy mansion, and as I settled my gaze over the last door, I reached for the doorknob and tried to open it. But, click, click. The door refused to budge. It was locked. What though? This was different compared to the other rooms. Unlike this one, I could enter every single room within the mansion. What could this mean? I felt my heart quicken as I stared at the door. Could this be a big part of the scenario? I held my breath, feeling the smooth and metal touch of the knob. I was just about to twist the knob again when... Ding! A notification flashed across my face again. Scenario is starting. The world shifted and I dropped to the ground. Look! Letting out a groan, I looked around, only to be shocked to find myself back where it all began. What though? But as if that wasn't bad enough, I suddenly saw a black vortex appear not far from where I was, and my mind churned. Then, a foot slowly emerged from within it. Operation: The Host's Invitation. Class: Black. A sentient Victorian mansion, hosting an elegant but deadly party overseen by the host. Guests must follow the host's every word with perfect, but not excessive, compliance. If you manage to impress the host, only good things will come. Disobedience results in grotesque, instantaneous death. A few moments prior, Velora Art Museum. Several large black SUVs stopped right outside the gates of the now crowded museum. Stepping out of one of the SUVs, a young girl whose looks could attract the attention of anyone who looked carefully brushed her blonde hair back while her green eyes scanned the surroundings.
Ah, shit.
Her face fell the moment she spotted several groups in the distance. Looking at their uniforms and clothes, she knew exactly who they were. She looked behind her where 4 other recruits appeared. They were the recruits she had chosen for the upcoming mission. Whatever you do, don't fall for their cheap provocations. Those bastards are merely trying to shake your mind before entering the gate. All of you should know how important it is to keep a clear mind when entering a gate.
Yes.
Understood. The recruits nodded with serious expressions, their faces filled with obedience. Zoe had a very good reputation among the recruits. Not only was she really pretty, but she was extremely capable. As such, nobody had anything to say to her words. Good. Nodding in satisfaction, Zoe turned her attention away from the recruits behind her and moved towards the mansion in the distance. But just as she took a single step, a certain voice reached her ears. If it isn't a familiar face. Zoe's eyes closed as she silently sighed. This fucker. Turning around, a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes appeared. He was relatively handsome, further accentuated by his bright white clothes, as the insignia of a tusk sat by his breast pocket. He was Tom Tucker, one of the 5 stars of the King-grade Ivory Dominion. It's been a while, Zoe. He waved with a smile. His eyes were curled into slits while his smile looked bright. On the outside, he looked extremely friendly. However, Zoe knew him well enough to know he was the furthest thing from nice. She had seen firsthand how he willingly sacrificed some of his team members in order to gain merit and clear scenarios. He was the most treacherous of people she had ever met in her line of work. Of all people, it had to be him. Zoe groaned to herself as Tom looked around. I don't see Kyle anywhere. Is he here? No, he's got other stuff to do. Oh, I see. That's such a pity. I wanted to catch up with him. It's been a while since I last saw him. I heard that he's doing quite well for himself. His eyes glinted with a certain something as he spoke before looking towards her recruits and moving away. The interaction was short, and yet the recruits already felt shaken. Zoe inwardly cursed when seeing this. That damn fucker, he's always up to no good. Her heart dropped. With him present, the situation had now changed. She now not only had to worry about the scenario, but she also had to worry about him and any possible things he might do in order to interfere with her team. Thankfully, it didn't seem like Crownfall had sent any annoying person on this mission. In the distance, her gaze settled on a burly man with broad shoulders and a thick back. His thinning black hair clung to his scalp, and his clothes strained to contain his bulky frame. Zoe was somewhat familiar with him. If I don't recall wrong, he should be called Ryan. He had somewhat of a reputation, but nothing in comparison to Tom. This kind of made her curious. Why would Crownfall send someone like him to the gate? Whatever, I'll figure it out later. Seeing the groups enter the museum, she started to move and made her way towards the basement where the gate had been found. Eventually reaching the place, she saw that all other groups had arrived, waiting by the gate as they all stared at an agent in a black suit and sunglasses. He stood by the gate with an extremely serious expression. As Zoe and the others arrived, he finally opened his mouth to speak, but just as he managed to get a few words out, a certain sound interrupted his words. Welcome to KH. All eyes suddenly flicked towards the source of the noise as Zoe's face froze, her hand covering her mouth. What just happened? Zoe looked at her hand in confusion. She didn't mean to do that. She didn't know what suddenly came over her. Later. Feeling everyone's gaze, Zoe didn't know what to say. But with her gaze falling on the not-so-pleased agent again, or more specifically, towards his sunglasses, a certain scene popped up in her mind, and her lips quivered. Hold it in, hold it in, hold it in. As I was saying, PFTTT. Hastily covering her mouth again, Zoe felt the piercing gazes of multiple people at once. She could see Tom's gaze from a distance as he watched on with amusement, while the agent's expression showed signs of extreme displeasure. Seeing how the situation was starting to unfold, Zoe bit her lips. It's all his fault. If it weren't for him and his damn sunglasses, she wouldn't have found this funny. Miss Turline. The agent's voice was cold as he scanned the notepad in his hands. Feeling his gaze, Zoe could only silently close her eyes. What's done is done. I'll just wait for him to finish nagging. The naggings, however, never came. After a moment's pause, the agent shifted his attention away from her. It was either perhaps he realized her identity, or because there was not much time to waste, he started to speak again. You've all been given a brief overview of the scenario. Several scouts have already gone in. From what we've gathered, it begins with your arrival at a large estate where a party is underway. The rule is simple: do whatever the host tells you. If he says dance, you dance. If he says sing, you sing. The agent paused, his expression turning grim. If you fail to do any of the listed things, you will die. The expressions of the recruits didn't change upon hearing the agent's words. Everyone was already aware of this fact. In fact, they were all used to the idea of dying at this point. From what we've managed to find, the way to clear the scenario is by impressing the host. If you somehow manage to impress the host, the scenario will be cleared. Everyone more or less knew everything beforehand. Zoe had as well, having thoroughly studied the scouts' reports in advance. This was the bare minimum one had to do before entering a gate. I don't think I'll have a problem with dancing. The same is with playing the instruments, but I don't know if I can impress the host with my skills. Thankfully, Zoe had brought several items with her in order to help her in this regard. The dancer's ribbons. Upon wearing the ribbon, one will be possessed by the deceased soul of a ballerina that once stood amongst the most talented in the world, automatically be able to dance smoothly and fluidly, but be careful not to be consumed by her. Tempo ring. Allows the wearer to maintain a tempo while wearing the ring. This is so the wearer will never be out of tempo when playing any instrument. These two items alone should be able to make her perform better than most people, and perhaps even impress the host. There are a few other things that you need to be careful of. First, you must never reveal your face. As the agent spoke, he retrieved a small mask that covered the upper part of his face. Do any of you not have a mask? If you enter the scenario without a mask, you will automatically be killed the moment the ball starts. It is extremely important that all of you have your masks with you. As the agent asked, his gaze swept the surroundings as Zoe retrieved her own mask. It was a smooth, featureless sphere with a glossy surface that reflected the light like polished obsidian. It covered her entire face, completely hiding her expression. Unfortunately, the guild had no suitable mask item for her. All the ones they had were far too dangerous for her to wear. She could only settle for a normal mask. Good, it looks like everyone here has brought a mask with them. In case someone doesn't have it, there are spare masks with me. The agent stepped aside to display a small box where a multitude of masks appeared. Since everyone looks ready, I won't hold you up for much longer. Just remember the things that I told you and... The agent paused, his voice turning somber. Just as you can impress the host, you can also disappoint him. Make sure you don't disappoint the host, otherwise. He didn't finish his sentence, nor did he have to. Everyone present clearly understood the meaning of his words, as they all silently nodded their heads. Good. Moving towards the coffin that sat at the center of the room, he pushed it open to reveal a familiar swirling black vortex. May all of you be blessed with luck. I hope you all come back in one piece. And with such words, the recruits jumped onto the coffin one by one. Zoe looked behind her to make sure that the recruits were ready, before stepping forward and moving towards the coffin. Just as she arrived at the coffin, her gaze paused on the agent who locked eyes with her. Your sunglasses remind me of something funny. That streamer kid. Hey. Zoe blinked, the agent slowly pulling his glasses away. I watched it too. I kind of had to since it's important for the task. I realized pretty quickly why you were laughing. He smirked. Funny, no? Zoe smiled wryly and nodded. It really was. Then, nodding at the agent, she jumped into the gate, her vision turning black before a bright light engulfed her. Swoosh! Blinking rapidly, she looked around and found herself standing in front of a large mansion. The sun bathed them from above as a gentle breeze drifted by, carrying the fresh scent of grass. The doors were wide open, and within she could hear the loud sound of chattering and music.
Swoosha, swoosha.
One by one, more and more people started to materialize, as everyone focused their attention on the large mansion in front of them. It took a minute for everyone to finally arrive, and when they did, they didn't hesitate to move forward. Zoe and her group were the last ones to move, as she waited for everyone in her group to appear. It was only then that she decided to appear. However, just as she had taken a step, her eyes turned and locked with a certain individual. He stood not far from her, his gaze drawn towards her.
HM.
Zoe frowned as she met his gaze.
A jester.
She quickly pulled her gaze away, shaking her head.
That's rather tacky.
She didn't notice a thing, right? Feeling Zoe's gaze, sweat dripped down from the side of my face. She was staring for too long, and the more she stared at me, the more nervous I felt. This persisted for a good couple of seconds, until she eventually pulled her gaze away.
Fuck, that was too nerve-wracking.
I sighed in relief. At the very least, it appeared that I had managed to successfully infiltrate the group. Everyone was too preoccupied with the scenario to even take notice of me, and I joined right as the first group entered, so even if they did find me suspicious, they'd think that I was merely part of the first group that entered. There were quite a few people present. I could count about 30. Judging from the different clothes they were wearing, they all came from different places. They all wore some ridiculous mask, making mine the least noticeable one. To make the situation even better, they all wore different types of clothes. Some tried to wear clothes fitting a ball, while others wore more casual ones. That was the only reason that prompted me to join the group. Still, I should have seen this coming from miles away. Taking into account the origins of the painting and the sudden portal that formed in the museum, I should have expected people from the guild to be here. And I sort of did after a certain point. But of all people to expect, Zoe wasn't the one I expected to be here. That made the situation worse for me. This was especially so when taking into account the fact that she was actually quite sharp when it mattered. I really hoped she wouldn't figure anything out. I could only maintain my distance for now, as I moved past the room that led to the ballroom. The moment I crossed the door, as if everything I had seen before was a lie, a bright light engulfed my vision. Looks like we have some new guests arriving with us. The lights from the chandelier pierced the surroundings, momentarily blinding my vision. Soon after, a rough yet pleased voice echoed in the hall as a glass was raised towards the tall ceilings of the ballroom, the glass cup reflecting the bright light of the chandelier. Excellent, how excellent, to see guests coming to my party. There's nothing that pleases me more than that. Blinking my eyes, I managed to clear my vision. I proceeded to look at the source of the noise. A chubby man stood at the center of the hall, dressed in a pristine white suit adorned with golden embroidery and a red bow tie. He wore a slim black mask to hide the top half of his face. His head was bald, and there was no noticeable feature about him besides his double chin. He looked normal at first, but that changed when he turned around to greet the people on the other side of the hall. Where the back of his head should have been, a face appeared. Grotesquely attached to the back of his head, the face looked around, its white eyes focused in our general direction. My stomach churned, and an all-too-familiar feeling rose up in my throat. I should have gone to the bathroom beforehand. I really wanted to puke. Everyone. The man's voice roared once again, the glass higher than before. I looked around and saw the other people throughout the room similarly raise their glasses. They all wore masks, hiding their faces, but taking a closer look, I realized something extremely crucial. Their masks. They were deeply embedded on their faces, the corners seeping deeply into their skin. I felt chills staring at the sight. As if they couldn't make the entire thing even creepier. Then again, after everything that I had experienced so far, this wasn't terrible. I could handle this much. Or at least I hoped I could. I knew things would get worse soon enough. Let's all have a toast first before we get started. This is my own way to show my appreciation for coming. Salute. The host proceeded to bring the cup in his hand to his mouth and took a sip. The rest followed his example. Pulling the glass away from his mouth, he twirled it in his hands. There are quite a few new faces here, unlike the regulars. Should I give everyone a brief overview of how things work around here? The ball host turned around again, fixing his gaze in our direction. He chugged the wine in his hand as red trickled down the side of his face. All right. He set the cup aside and dabbed the corner of his mouth with a handkerchief. Then, turning his attention to the piano, where one of the audience members had taken a seat, he began to explain the rules. The rules are simple. A member of the audience will play a piece for everyone to listen to. Everyone will find a partner and dance. Whoever performs the worst will be directly eliminated. Eliminated. I held my breath the moment I heard those words. I was well aware that in this case, eliminated didn't just mean excluded from the game. Elimination meant death. We'll stop until someone eventually impresses me. A smile crept onto his face. It was a creepy smile that left me shuddering. That's all simple, right? The rules were set. They were simple and easy to understand. But it was the simplicity that made my stomach churn. I have to impress him. Through either playing a piece or dancing. This ass fuck. I slowly turned my attention towards the piano and the man sitting next to it. In my current situation, the only thing I could do was play the piano. I was far better at it than dancing. But could I really play something good enough to impress the host? I was decent at the piano. I had taken quite a few lessons when I was young, but I was no godly talent. I found it hard to believe that I could play anything that could impress the host. Then, wait. I looked around, my gaze falling on Zoe and the other guild members. That was when I realized something important. I wasn't alone. They were also here. Who was to say that I had to be the one impressing the host? Why didn't I think about this sooner? I'm ready, what about you all? I'm feeling in the right mood right now. Let's see if there's anyone that can impress me tonight. The bright lights started to dim faintly as the people around headed towards the main dancing area. I followed along with the rest. But just as I was about to move, the host's voice rang in the air once more. Oh, and... He paused, the smile on his face slowly fading, and his eyes starting to turn sinister. All noise in the room ceased as all attention fell on the host. If you hear the sound of a little girl crying, ignore it. Hey, clap. He clapped his hands and the piano began playing. Find a partner quickly, the dance has started. The scenario began. Quickly look for a partner and start dancing. As if it had been planned beforehand, the guild members quickly paired off, forming groups of 2. The same happened for the NPCs that didn't belong to the guild. Before I knew it, everyone had paired up but me. Ah, shit. I desperately looked around in hopes of finding someone who was alone, but it became quite clear to me that everyone had paired up. What do I do? Dang tilde. A gentle tune rang in the air, and everyone began dancing. I was the only one who wasn't dancing, and... The host's head turned in my direction. He stood in silence, his expression calm and devoid of any emotion. He was waiting for me to move. But I didn't have a partner. How could I move without one? Damn it. Damn it, damn it. Do you not have a partner? Eventually, his voice rang, and I felt several people turn their attention towards me. I could see from their faces that they were confused as they looked at me. Who is he? Why does he not have a partner? I'm sure that we assigned an even number so that this situation wouldn't occur. What group is he with? The situation was starting to spiral in the worst way possible. So, my heart sank as I heard the host's voice once more. The movements of those around me eventually stopped, and so did the music. Silence. Hundreds of eyes focused on me. And the words simply left my mouth without a thought. I already have a partner. Do you already have a partner? The host looked around. Where I do not see your partner. That's because I haven't called for them yet. So that's the case. The host smiled, his eyes directed towards me. I knew in that moment that if I didn't do anything, I'd be done for. I took a deep breath. I'll be fine, this should work. It was going to work. It will work. Under the watchful eyes of everyone present, I slowly brought my hand forward. A black hand grasped my hand right after, and a dark figure materialized before me. The faces of everyone present changed as the Nightwalker materialized, but I promptly ignored them and fixed my attention on the host. Is this good enough? The host didn't answer immediately, he just stared at me in silence. I felt like losing my mind in that moment. Quickly decide, just accept it already. Wow, what a grand entrance. Who would have thought you'd suddenly make your partner appear like that? Impressive. The host turned to the piano and flicked his hand. Dang! The music resumed, and so did the dancing. I did so too. But just as I moved, I felt the Nightwalker squeezing my hand tightly. I know, resist. I looked towards the bright lights above. The Nightwalker's greatest weakness was light. It could hardly move within the light, and it was slowly starting to poison it. I could practically hear its screams in my mind. Feeling the strength it put in my hands as it began to move with me, I knew that it was in pure and sheer agony. However, I had no other choice. Resist for a bit, I'll recall you back when this is over. Come, dance to your heart's content, show me what you're capable of. The host's voice rang as I focused all my attention on the Nightwalker. I was trying my best to keep it from fadding on the spot. But its movements were slowly starting to stiffen. I didn't have much time. TZZZ. But a faint sizzling sound reached my ears. I felt a lump form in my throat when I saw it coming from the Nightwalker as its figure started to dissolve before me. No. I just need a few minutes, that's all I need. As if understanding my thoughts, the Nightwalker tried to resist, the sizzling slowing down. I took a step forward, the Nightwalker matching my tempo. The Nightwalker was attuned to my thoughts, able to see the images in my mind and mirror them with uncanny precision. Following the dances from my memories, its movements flowed seamlessly, almost as if we had rehearsed them countless times. The Nightwalker was much better than me. And as a result, I let it lead the dance. I merely followed from that point. Hold on, just hold on. Who the hell is he? By now, there was not a single person who wasn't aware of the strange jester-like figure. He had come out of nowhere and suddenly taken the spotlight. Dang! His figure glided across the ball floor, his movements in sync with the strange black creature, as the pair's movements were almost flawless. Beneath the bright lights of the chandelier, the two shone brighter than anyone present. The sight was one for the eyes, but at the same time, it made everyone grow alert. This jester. Who was he? He wasn't in the scouting report. The scenario had deviated from what they had originally been told by the scouts. Some inwardly panicked at the thought. There were times, occasionally, when such incidents occurred, and in such times, the difficulty of the gate would oftentimes increase, and so would the mortality rate. Not only that, but there was something more crucial than that. With the sudden changes occurring in the scenario, their preparations and everything planned to tackle the gate, would they still be able to stick to them? Don't panic, keep doing what we've planned. Zoe's voice quietly whispered to her dance partner as she tried her best to maintain calm. The situation was bad, but in such a situation, the most important thing was to remain calm. She wasn't the only one who was like this. After the initial shock, the other guild members resumed their dance, and the ball went on full swing once more. For now, this was the most appropriate response. It was just a pity that one of the groups stumbled as a result of the sudden situation. Great, amazing, wonderful. The host showered the surroundings with praise, his eyes darting all over as he looked extremely pleased with what he was seeing. Everyone danced to the best of their abilities, but only one group managed to pull the host's gaze more than once. It was the jester and the black creature. Their dance commanded the room, every step pulling attention like magnets, and just when they seemed impossible to ignore, smoke began to curl from the creature's body, its form growing lighter with each movement, fading, yet still dancing. The sight, it made them look even more imposing. Dong! The two moved with such grace and elegance that they even managed to absorb the attention of the NPCs. Zoe clenched her teeth, trying her best to dance to her best abilities. But even she felt inferior to the jester. And then, the tune in the air mellowed, and the jester pair began to slow down. The dance was coming to an end. Duh. From fast to slow, the pair matched the slowing tempo of the music, steam rising out of the black creature's body, becoming more and more pronounced as it started to surround the two. Everyone slowed down. All eyes on them. And soon the last notes played. Duh. With the final notes echoing across the room, the jester came to a graceful stop, his posture poised and elegant as the black creature before him started to fade, dissipating entirely into the air. The surroundings turned quiet, and everyone came to a stop. Bravo! But the silence was fleeting. With thunderous applause, the host showered the lone jester with praise. Wonderful, how wonderful. That was an amazing performance. You almost had me impressed. Almost. That wasn't enough to impress it. The hearts of many started to sink as a realization soon dawned on them. It was just as they feared. The difficulty of the scenario had increased. I truly admire the grace of your movements. They flowed with such smooth elegance and the tempo was spot on, but there was something missing, a soul. Yes, it was flawless, yet it felt empty. The host began to give criticism to the jester's performance as he stood in the middle of the hall without moving. He simply accepted the criticism without any words. And as the host finished his words, he turned towards a specific group. Now talking about the group that impressed me the least. Panic flashed across the faces of the pair under scrutiny. They opened their mouths as if to speak, but the host cut them off before a single word could escape. Everything about your performance was appalling and unimpressive. I'm afraid that this is it for you. He waved his hand once. Bang! That was all it took for their heads to explode. The floor was dyed red. Two headless bodies limped onto the floor. Nobody made a sound. All eyes fell on the bodies and then towards the host. Have someone clean this mess up. We'll resume with the ball shortly after. Two headless people emerged from the entrance of the room and moved towards the corpses on the floor, dragging them away while leaving a long trail of red along the path. I could only swallow silently while staring at the scene. At the same time, I looked back towards the host, who grabbed himself another drink. What is he going to make us do now? I don't think I can dance again. I couldn't summon the Nightwalker anymore. It had died. This was already giving me a headache. I knew exactly what would happen if I summoned it again, so I couldn't. I just couldn't. While we wait for the cleaners to handle those things, how about we switch things up a bit? Switch things up a bit. My heart pressed against my chest. What was this damn host going to do now? I've noticed something interesting. Despite everyone wearing masks, some of you clearly know each other. Your movements, polished yes, but they're missing that spark of spontaneity, that flash of raw inspiration I'm after. So for the next round, let's shake things up. It's time for a switch. Find yourselves a new partner. What did he say? Oh my God, why are things changing again? Several whispers managed to reach my mind as the room stirred. Those from the guild started to panic, seemingly taken by surprise by the sudden development. I could imagine why. They are probably throwing away a lot of the preparations they had made in advance before. Oh, right. As if suddenly recalling something, the host looked around. His gaze swept everyone until it settled over a certain individual wearing a simple gold mask. I almost forgot. He shook his head while covering his face. We have one extra person. At this rate, one will be left out again. That can't happen again. It dawned on everyone pretty quickly what the host's intentions were. This was especially so for the one wearing the golden mask. Wait. But, goodbye. He could do nothing about it. Bang! His head exploded, and his body fell limply onto the floor shortly after. Thump! Blood began to seep onto the floor once again. I felt breathless at the sight. My stomach churned more than ever before, and my body tensed. Shortly after, several cleaners came into the room and began cleaning the floor, dragging the body away. Everyone will now have their own partner. Isn't that great? The host looked all too pleased with himself as he raised his glass in the air. He then settled his gaze on another person. Wearing a long and elegant red dress, she had her face covered by a red mask that matched her dress. Her entire body froze up when she felt the host's gaze. You? No, I don't. The girl in the red dress shook her head rapidly, trying her best to reject whatever she was about to be asked to do. Her half-exposed face was pale, and the trembling of her body didn't betray the fear that she was currently experiencing. Yes, it has to be you. Her judgment made sense. But it didn't really matter. You will be the one to play the piano. I hope you can play an amazing piece for all of us to dance to. The girl's face turned even paler. I looked around. I could tell from her expression, alongside that of a few others, that this entire scenario was deviating from the norm. She probably knows how to play the piano, but after everything that I've witnessed, it's clear that she's afraid of making any mistakes. The entire scenario had changed in a way that just the subtlest of mistakes meant death. Her head just wasn't in it. Are you not willing to do it? The host's voice lowered and the atmosphere changed. It suddenly felt incredibly tense. All eyes turned to the girl in red as she scanned the room in a fluster, her gaze finally locking onto someone in a striking golden mask, its edges flaring out in sharp, dramatic spikes. Their eyes locked until he looked away. Her face paled further. All right then, if you're not going to play then. I'll play. The woman hastily shouted as she cut off the conductor. Her face was entirely face, and she settled her gaze onto the piano. I can play the piano, yes. She moved towards it, prompting the host to smile. That wasn't hard, was it? Right. The host was extremely sadistic. It looked like he had already ranked everyone's performances in his mind. He was slowly picking on the ones that had performed the worst, looking for excuses to kill them. Of the 30 that had originally arrived, 27 were still. Bang! From the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of a certain red dress. Did I say you could touch the piano? Can't you see that we have a mess to clean before we can start dancing again? I pulled my gaze away. My guess wasn't wrong. The host, he was just trying to find excuses to eliminate everyone in the room. And if my guess wasn't wrong, oops, it looks like we're one person too many. I guess one has to go. No. Bang! Another head exploded. The all too familiar red stain on the floor. Oh my, at this rate we might never get to dance, if people just followed the rules. The hall fell silent again. Everyone was tense, and as I looked around, my gaze couldn't help but fall on Zoe. Seeing how she hasn't moved yet, I take it she isn't strong enough to take on the monster. That would make sense if the scenario had suddenly risen in levels. Then, did that mean that we had no other choice but to clear the scenario? But how was that possible? I had already done the best that I could. I didn't see how I could do better than what I had just done. You will be the next one to play the piano. The host soon selected a new victim. When I turned my head, I was surprised to see that it was the man with the golden mask. I could tell with just one glance that he was different from the rest as he calmly walked towards the grand piano and took his seat, his crisp white suit a stark, elegant contrast against the piano's polished black surface. The room was also cleaned shortly after as the host nodded. It looks like we're ready to dance again. How wonderful. You have 1 minute before we begin. Quickly find a new partner. There will be no surprises this time, right? The host silently looked at me and my stomach churned. The room scrambled soon after as everyone moved to look for a new partner. I felt a pit in my stomach as I looked around. Who would partner up with me? I turned my head and stopped. A pair of emerald eyes met mine, steady and focused, as though I were truly the one she was looking at. Then, she stepped toward me and extended her hand. Dance with me. Chapter 65, Masquerade Ball 4. Later, her outstretched hand reached for mine. She was close. Getting closer. She hasn't noticed anything, right? No, that's not possible. How could she notice a single thing? Her hand grasped mine. We both lifted them at the same time. And then, dong! The music began. It was an elegant and cheerful piece. From the moment the note played, it was as if the entire room lit up. The tune effortlessly flowed into my ears, and my steps began to move on their own. I wasn't the only one like this. I looked around to see everyone moving at the same pace. I slowly turned my gaze towards the man in the golden mask. Was this his doing? Oh, what a wonderful piece, amazing. The host started praising the man in the golden mask. That served as enough evidence for me to tell that he was the one responsible for my sudden movements. Tusk. I heard someone click their tongue. Turning my head, I saw Zoe staring in the direction of the man with the golden mask. Lucky bastard. Rather than scared or nervous about the situation, she was angry. If I had been the one called, I would have been able to do the same. Oh, that was when it all hit me. They're all lunatics, of course they're going to act like this. I should have seen it coming from miles away. Who are you? But then, the inevitable question came. Zoe's emerald eyes were locked with mine. You very clearly don't belong with us. I can tell you're not some anomalous entity, and yet you were somehow able to summon one. What is your purpose? Her grip over my hands tightened. It hurts. Are you not going to answer? Zoe took a step forward, and I followed along. We were both puppets now, bound by the music. It told us what we needed to do. All we had to do was follow along. Are you the one responsible for the sudden increase in difficulty of the gate? Her questions kept coming. Questions that I myself couldn't answer. Just let this end quickly. Increase the tempo. I slowly turned to see the host, staring in the direction of the pianist. Your music is wonderful, but the dancing is getting stale. Increase the tempo. Does dang. And increase he did. The shift was felt by practically everyone. My legs moved faster and my heartbeat sped up. Shit. From the sudden rise in intensity, I realized that my breathing was slowly starting to intensify. This was starting to feel like a workout. I thought about my stamina and felt like throwing up on the spot. If this continued, then... No, don't think about it. I put those thoughts aside and tried my best to keep up with the dance. But it was starting to get very hard. Swoosh. Zoe pulled me down and I just followed along, our masks just barely brushing. My skin crawled when I saw her emerald eyes peering right into me. That look of hers. How many times had I seen it before? She was analyzing me. Your eyes, they feel familiar. My heart skipped as we rose again. Swoosh. I raised our hands, she spun beneath, then returned. I wrapped an arm around her waist. We were even closer now. So were her eyes. Yes, they certainly feel familiar. Do I know you? I blinked slowly. She was as sharp as her character was designed to be. Your palms are sweating, nervous. No, I'm just tired. Am I onto something? Her face came closer, her mouth whispering to me. I could feel her lips slowly pulling up. Keeping a pretty lady waiting. This is bad. It was as if she was able to deduce things the more she looked at me. This sort of broken ability, it really had to belong to her, didn't it? I had been swept into an unexpected catastrophe. No, I can't lose my composure here. I had to remain firm. I'd be done for if I let the panic take over. I had to remain calm and show nothing. She was only going on a hunch. If I played my cards right, then I'd be able to get her off my back. How exactly can I turn this situation around? I had to think. And that was when it happened. Hick! A soft, subtle crying echoed through the ballroom. Every guild member's head turned upward in perfect unison. Zoe included. Hick! It sounded like a little girl. The voice was faint, but it crawled into my ears, burrowing deep. A chill ran down my spine. I tried to ignore it. Bang! The ballroom door slammed shut. The floor trembled, windows rattled, everything in the room started to shake, and the temperature of the room seemed to suddenly drop. Cold. Like I said, don't mind the crying, just focus on your dance. The host and the NPCs appeared wholly unperturbed by the situation as they continued to dance. But me, I could barely focus. Bangs bang. The doors opened, slammed, and trembled again. My balance faltered, my breath grew shorter. Get a grip. I bit down on my tongue to ground myself. I thought I was holding it together. Until I realized I was the only one struggling. Everyone else glided across the ballroom effortlessly, masks serene, movements fluid. Zoe, too, as she kept her eyes closed, her mind focused on the task at hand. That's when the sinking feeling hit me. I'm going to fail this, aren't I? I looked around to see that I was the only one making mistakes. They were small, but they were piling up. No, I can't fail, not like this. I increased my focus, following the music that I could barely hear through the trembling of the room. Bang! The door slammed once more, this time harder than before. I silently clenched my teeth. Damn it, make it stop. Hick. But the crying persisted. It came from all directions, but at the same time, it felt like it was coming from my head directly. I felt shivers knowing this. But I had to focus on the dance. And that was what I did. Thankfully, the crying soon stopped. It merely lasted a couple of minutes. But it was also at that moment that the music in the air had come to an end. Dang! And soon enough, the final note rang out. The music stopped, and everyone managed to pull themselves away from their partner. Me included. Applause filled the air. The host clapped, his face beaming as he turned toward the man in the golden mask. Wonderful, that was an absolutely stunning performance, extremely amazing. I have no words to say, no, well. He paused, and the entire room held its breath. Then, slowly, though you tried your best to mask your mistakes, I did notice a few. Such a pity it could have been a perfect piece. I noticed a visible shift in the man in the golden mask's features. He clearly didn't seem to have expected this sort of feedback. Judging from the expression he wore when the piece ended, he appeared to be confident in what he had shown. But even that wasn't good enough. But if that wasn't enough, what was? Tensions rose. I lowered my head to keep my presence as low as possible. My thoughts were elsewhere. Could the host not have noticed my mistakes? They were really small, so it shouldn't be a problem. I desperately recalled the dance and frantically thought back to any possible mistake that I could have made during the dance. There were quite a few, but they were very small. Surely he wouldn't notice. Yes, he might not notice. I slowly raised my head back up. But if you had to rate your performance, how would you rate it? The host was already in front of me. When did? I'll decide based on your words, how about it? His lips pulled into a creepy smile.